Carson, Leno, Fallon. Now, it's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today in beautiful Southern California. About to have a conversation with Max Mussio Lewis. May have heard from him prior. We're going to peel back some new things about the Friuli wine business. Wine Talks, of course, available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you hang out. But I want you to give me some kudos, man. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a like out there and subscribe to the show. If you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. I appreciate that. But there's a show out there right now that I think you'll be interested in hearing, and that was not Max. Max is our guest. Mel Masters. We lost him last week, him and his wife, and he was one of the great negociants in the old days. I'm talking about he's one of the guys that opened restaurants in New York. He was the first marketing manager for Jordan Winery. He is got some huge brands on the market that he created and sold, like Les Gemelles. And I think you'll enjoy his comedy because he's an Englishman turned Frenchman turned American. Figure that one out.
Wow. That's more than me.
So anyway, here to talk to Max Mussio Lewis. Welcome to the show again.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me, Paul.
It's always a pleasure to have you here, and thanks for coming out. I know that's, it's afternoon in Los Angeles. It's kind of a pain in the rear end to get around.
Yeah, it is. But, I'm used to it. After so many years.
Yeah, you just get used to it.
Driving around all over the West Coast. It's, yeah.
Of course, I was getting used to the fact that I went to a tasting yesterday, and it wasn't, thank goodness. When are you guys going to do a tasting anyway? Friuli wines. Have you done one lately, a trade tasting?
We did one last year in LA and San Francisco.
Well, are they successful?
Yeah. It can be a hit and miss.
Well, I know
some
that.
people just
kind
show
of
up just for the free wines. They're like freeloaders. Some other people are very interested, but the problem is that it's really hard to get all the buyers in one place these days.
I have to tell you that this picture that's behind you, my father and I, and he was instrumental in the beginning of Los Angeles wine buying in the early 70s, late 60s, and actually tasting wines before he put them on the shelf. But one of the things he taught me when I went on the street with him when I bought the company in 88 was he had a little chair, a stool, and it was left over from his hospital rental days. He used to rent pharmacy equipment because he was a pharmacist, and it was a cane that you pushed down and it would turn into a seat.
Wow.
And so he would come, and for years after I bought the company, when I went to a tasting, the vendors would go, hey, where's your seat? Where's your chair? Because they remember my dad doing this.
Yeah.
And he would stick that thing at the end of the table and stick his glass out and said, let's do them all.
Wow.
And then he'd go to the next table, and we would, and so I don't have the chair anymore, but I still do that. I showed up at the tasting, I stuck the glass out, let's do them all. And you know what? And based on your comment,
that's hardcore, by the way.
Well, we would go to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And you were saying that they come to party.
Yeah. Most of the people do. Yeah.
Yeah, they bring the girlfriend, they bring the boyfriend.
No, they bring the whole family. They bring the nephews. If they're of legal age, they just crawl around from one table to the other. So
for the listeners, I'm talking about a trade tasting is when a distributor like Max would put up, get a hotel room somewhere or get a restaurant venue, supply the wines at a table, have people pouring them. You'd have glasses, there'd be hors d'oeuvres, and then it's meant to showcase the wines, right?
Yeah. And it's a great way for people in the industry to connect, That's how you kind of build relationships. It's just, Paul, COVID changed everything.
It did change everything.
It changed everything. So the classic way of doing the trade tastings, I don't think it works anymore. We went from Zoom tastings back to trade tastings, then Zoom again. It's just, our industry is very confusing these days. It's very confused. Distributors are very confused.
It's very confusing on all sides. In fact, right now, as we're speaking, there's a gentleman at my home. He's finishing off my cellar that I started. The reason I'm building a cellar at my home, because I never needed it before, was that during COVID, we were killing it.
Yeah.
How on the wholesale side, was it busy for you?
No.
Because there was no restaurants.
No, yeah. I always, me personally, my 90% of my business has always been restaurants. So on premise instead of off premise. And obviously, COVID showed that a lot of people are comfortable staying home, shopping from home, and just going online and shopping. They can get wines delivered to their homes from Vons, from Costco. So it's
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second because,
Yeah.
yes, that's what happened. COVID was great
Yeah.
for us. We were up like 30%.
yeah.
Whatever I told them to buy, they would buy.
Mm-hmm.
They took the recommendation. And the reason I have 2,000 to 3,000 bottles left over is because as I was buying them, and then COVID literally just stopped one day, the confinement.
Yeah.
And it literally plummeted after that to below 2019 levels.
Yes.
And when you say that the wholesale side's confused,
Yeah.
that must be trickle-down economics because I think the consumers are confused.
Consumers are very confused also because the price of the wines change across the board.
Yeah.
So before 2019, we had, there was a certain cost to import the wines. During COVID, it was a nightmare because all the logistics, I'm talking about the imports, all the logistics, they went up. Like bringing a container in for us went up for like almost 40%.
Yeah, wow.
Between 30 and 40%. So obviously, the price of the wines jacked up and then it went down a little bit. Now things are a little bit better, but you never know when the next wave is going to hit, unfortunately.
Well,
And
did
now
restaurants become different buyers than they were pre-COVID?
Restaurants, they change everything.
Yeah.
Their model changed dramatically. First of all, at the beginning of the pandemic, just to go back there, like when everyone reopened, they had so much stock and inventory that some of my clients didn't buy anything for like months.
Yeah.
They tried to get rid of what they had, and then they started buying wines again. But it showed that consumers, because they've been locked in their houses, like all of us, for like a year and a half, they acquire more knowledge. I mean, when people are home and they watch YouTube videos and they try to get a knowledge of everything. So consumers, the pandemic made the consumers more aware and educated.
That's true.
Which
I'll
is
buy that.
great. So that also reflected on a lot of the wine list. And that and a generational shift into the age of the buyers that change a lot of things too, because right now we're able to import and to sell wines that were basically unsellable before the pandemic. So buyers are
What, based on
branching out.
character or based on, look, since, by the way, for the listeners, Max is a specialist in Friuli wines, which is the north east of Italy, above next to Slovenia,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole separate region. And we'll talk about that in a second. But why do you think? Was it a flavor profile that changed? Like, because when I heard the term older millennial the other day on the podcast, I went, wait a minute, we have older millennials. And millennials were that consumer that we couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
But now it seems like
They're
maybe-
older.
Yeah. I was like, what? And I forgot my daughters are millennials. But is that the group you're talking about where this changed? Or
Yeah. That, and also that what is the current generation? The Z Gen.
I don't know what letter we're on.
Z Gen. Yeah. I'm still on the X Gen. I'm still on
We
X
don't know.
Gen. So-
Just go down the gamut. But it's, and the reason I wanted you to come back on the show is to talk about this part because it is confusing for the consumer. I think everybody's in the same boat. I have vice president from Vintage Wine Estates coming on the show tomorrow. And, she's corporate America wine. I'm dying to hear what she's going to say because they have all the data in the world to play with. And I don't think they know the answers either as to what's going on. But Friuli is such a specific part of the world for wine and not that well known.
The new generations are looking for the most obscure stuff they can find.
Are they?
So, yes. So now it's a trend to go after not only Friuli, but, wine regions that are now very well developed in this market, in this country, and they're looking for that. And people travel a little bit more. Actually, I'll take it back. After COVID almost disappeared or whatever, after we were able to travel again, especially this younger generation of millennials, they started flooding like Italy like crazy. Like the tourism is up like I don't know how many points. Like this summer, Italy was flooded with American tourists. So you combine those two things, the fact that they want to travel to more obscure regions instead of going to Tuscany and Piedmont, they try to go to Alto Adige, they try to go to Friuli, obviously. They try to go to Molise, they try to go to Liguria. So like they're literally going off the beaten path, which is great.
That's
for
phenomenal.
us. Yeah.
We're leaving. I'm leaving on the 22nd for Italy, actually.
There you go. See, you're another one.
But we're going to be in Tuscany because my friend bought a villa at some.
It's because you're
silent
not
auction.
a millennial, see?
Yeah, exactly. No, but yes, funny. It's funny you say that because I started thinking about this, and I'm very fortunate with the connections and the people we know, and I can go to any country in the world and go visit wineries and be treated nicely. But what do you do when you travel to? I mean, if I'm a millennial like my daughters, and I go somewhere, I mean, you're going to see the sights. Maybe you go if you're in Rome, you go to the Colosseum, whatever. But wow, it's kind of cool because it's very cultural to go visit a winery and taste and sit in the yard or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. This is what's booming right now, like wine tourism in Italy.
So Friuli
is part of that too.
Spiking.
Yeah, Friuli. I think Friuli was featured as a region for tourism on a article on actually on a show on CNN like 6 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's gaining definitely traction.
And the wine trail, so to speak, and as we're talking, I forgot, that's not the Adriatic, that's at the top there, is it?
It's Adriatic.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so you're at the top of the Adriatic.
Yeah.
Right? And you sort of, that whole arc right there from the, Friuli is basically the arc until it runs into Slovenia.
Yeah, Slovenia and Austria, yeah.
If I go, Slovenia, Austria to the north.
Yeah.
So if I go there, is it not congested with wineries, but enough to sort of keep you entertained and drive down the road?
Yeah.
And
There is a lot to explore in our region, just people don't know it yet. You know? I mean, it's still a small region. We're like 1.5 million people living in Friuli.
Yeah.
So it's one of the lesser, populated regions. But we're a crossroad of many cultures. There is diversity because obviously, Slovenians, there are many people that live on the border that speak Slovenian and Italian fluently.
Wow.
And on the northern part, Austrian and Italian fluently. So, and then we have our own dialect, Friulian, which is, if you're not from that area, you will not understand.
It's Italian, but you can understand. I can understand.
No, it's a very hard dialect.
Really?
It's very rough. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So
just like us, people from people from those areas.
Just like the personality of the guy sitting on the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've been working with the Armenian wine industry a lot lately, tasting some wines, and this is a brand new industry. It's kind of bizarre because, the oldest intact winery ever found is 6,000 years old. I visited a few months ago. But then all technology for winemaking stopped during the USSR.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so it's kind of an old world place, but with new world requirements because they just got the technologies. Friuli is pretty old world. Been doing it for a long time.
Yes. It's very traditional, very conservative in that way. Yes.
So when you mentioned talking about during COVID, even now there's Instacart and all the delivery services.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go to the market, I'm not going to see a lot of Friuli wines on the shelf. I'm going to see a lot of stuff that I have a pet peeve with,
right?
The Joshes and the Apothic Reds, but I'm not going to see Friuli wines there. So
you're going to see a lot of Pinot Grigio.
Pinot Grigio from Friuli or just Venezia Pinot Grigio, Northern Italy?
Venezia Giulia, but mostly it's from our region, Friuli.
Okay, so that's good. That's a little bit of recognition.
Yeah. Well, we're famous for, the grape nationally. And then internationally, I mean. And, a lot of the grapes that we have in Friuli, they came originally from France. We're famous for the international varietals like Chardonnay, Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. So,
really?
Yeah.
Because it's pretty cold up there. You're at the base of the Dolomites, right?
We are, yes. Yeah, but it's not super cold. It is cold, but we also have, the mitigation for the breeze from the sea, from the Adriatic Sea. So you have these two currents that clashes. So it creates a perfect environment for us to create some amazing
Did you
wines.
were you living in LA at the time that you started doing this?
Oh, no. I started drinking
This morning.
wines when I was like 10. So I kind of grew up in that culture. But yeah, I mean, professionally, I started in LA. That's where I moved here. So
Okay,
yeah.
so you come to LA, you think this is a good idea. I'm going to start bringing Friuli and wines in. You either thought that people would receive this very well because they had seen them before, or you thought you could do it better than the other guys doing it. Which one of those?
Combination of both.
Yeah.
No, I always had the passion for Friuli wines because, you know, it's a chance for me to talk about my region, my culture, where I'm from. So I obviously have a different passion when I present those wines, when I go around to the buyers. Then, you know, the people buying the wines from you or whatever they buy from you, they need to, you know, they need to see the passion in your eyes. Otherwise, it's just going to be like cold calling, like a wine like everyone else.
It is passionate. That this whole industry is driven by passion. And we're going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
Because the reason I say it that way is a lot of products are coming to the market that have zero to do with the wine, the passion it takes to run the wine business. And a lot of the big wholesalers like Southern, RNDC, they're all going to website-driven sales. If you want to order a case, just get online. You can't have a conversation. There's nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
They're trying to lower their costs. They have less people on the street. Then that kind of takes away from what you're saying.
It takes away everything. It takes away the magic. There is no, you know, the bigger guys, like you said, the bigger wholesaler, they're gigantic and they're just going to keep growing. It's right now in the market, there's two factions. There's always been like the smaller guys like us and then the bigger guys. But what they're doing is that they're taking away the romanticism of presenting a wine and being passionate about. And like you said, they can go online. You as a customer, you can order the wine. I think it's not a good strategy. Wine, it's still one of those products because in this case, you know, we're talking about products that you need to build a relationship with your buyer in order to sell it. Wine business, it's all about relationships because everyone has wines. Everyone has good wines. Good wines are everywhere. The palate of the American is more sophisticated than when it was like 25, 30, 40 years ago. So it's all about how you connect with your buyer. So if a restaurant owner goes to Southern or RNDC's website, which, by the way, those are companies that I respect a lot for what they're doing, and they're going to buy wine from that, they just don't have the connection with whoever is the rep. So why should they buy from you that way, you know, instead of the small guy like me or like hundreds of smaller guys like me, they go around with their wine bag.
What is happening with the small guys? I mean, there was a lot of consolidation when RNDC got bought. You bought Young's and then, you know, what's it called? Beverage buying Wine Warehouse. But
Breakthrough.
Are there more smaller guys doing this or less than there were?
I think in our world, the smaller importers, we're all very fractioned. There's not really a need to consolidate smaller guys because, you know, we like our Friuli project is very particular, it's very focused. It would be really hard for me and my business partners to join other companies. We have our own thing going on. And for other guys, it's the same. We are small. We provide quality. We talk to our customers on a daily basis. We are basically focused on the client's needs. Our obsession is, you know, as a customer, I need to provide you the good product, the good price, and all the service, you know, that you can get. Like delivery-wise, you know, have the wine deliver on time. And the big guys, they're kind of, you know, losing that touch. They have the big brands. They have the big numbers. They have, you know, their Excel spreadsheets.
It's a funny irony about that. You know, I sold the company 3 months ago. It sort of coincided with one of my biggest fans inside the largest corporations. She was with RNDC, and without her and her passion to help her customers and me and her passion for wine is what saved me in a lot of cases. But now you didn't
Right.
expect that from large suppliers to come up with pricing and volumes that I used to buy, unless somebody was in there really waving the flag. Now with you,
Yeah.
you already had the passion. But we're going back to this passion conversation. I don't want to abuse the word, but if you're going to walk into a restaurant or you're going to walk into a retail store and you're going to have that glow in your eyes and you're going to talk about this wine, those are the stories it takes for that retailer or that restaurateur to sell the wine also.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So if it's just the regular stuff that everybody sees at the market at the same time, no problem. You can buy that online. But if that restaurateur wants to set him or herself apart, she's got to have the Friulian wines and know a little bit about the story, which is coming from you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a sales tool for them also.
Yeah.
And they can tell it to their customers, and the customers can tell to other customers.
So I'm losing my filter, Max. I'm going to be 65, in a month or two. And
you don't look 65.
Well, I appreciate that. My wife and I were discussing how our parents had lost, the older they got, my mom got to their 90s, both of my parents, she would say whatever she wanted to say. And what are you going to do? Argue with her? So
never.
But I had to do this the other day. A young kid came in from one of the big houses, never seen him before. They're making their cold calls, trying to know everybody. And his little manager said, well, we're all required to have a WSET 2 degree. And I looked at him, I go, so what? I mean, I literally said, so what? They couldn't believe it. I go, if you don't care to go get it on your own, or at least read the information on your own it takes to be that knowledgeable, then it's irrelevant to me that you have to get this degree. He goes, well, it's a requirement of the company. I go, it's stupid.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to come to me and talk to me about wine, you should know about it already. You shouldn't be concerned about your WSET 2, which isn't all that hard to get anyway. But I think it's just a kind of a ridiculous thing because you should have the passion.
I met so many reps that they have the WSET 2 that they don't even know. When I was talking about my region, they didn't even know where it was.
Yeah.
Like, seriously?
No, it's for the listeners that are hearing this, you're sort of getting some inside baseball, but it's important because I have this romantic view of wine. I keep saying it on the show with other guests that eventually all the generations, because it's so old, I mean, we know there's at least 10,000 years worth of wine. And let's face it, Max, it's the same thing as it was then. We have a little more technology and we have some other things in refining it, but it's still fermented grape juice, which is a natural process.
Exactly.
In fact, now they're going back to all the natural processes. So you're going back to 6,000 years because they're not doing anything to it, right?
No, exactly.
So I have this romantic view that one day, all generations, LMNOP and millennials, when they taste a fine Friuli wine, something happens. Properly made wine.
It clicks.
And they go, that White Claw's not so great, is it?
You know what's funny? I noticed I am lucky enough to see this change as we speak all these years, because when I first moved to America, so first of all, let me do a little bit of a background for your listeners. So Friuli wines, the production in Friuli for wines is 70% white wines, 30% reds.
Wow.
So growing up there, I'm like, obviously my wines of choice are pretty much all the white wines that we have in Friuli. And when I first moved to America, it's like 12 years ago, it was reversed. It's like people here don't drink as many white wines as I thought they did. Like they're all obsessed with big reds. At the time, 12 years ago, like Amarone and Valpolicella was still very trendy. Now Amarone, it's kind of going down with sales a little bit. And the white wines from Friuli or white wines in general, good white wines are picking up. So I'm very, kind of proud of that.
I have noticed that actually in restaurants, looking around at what people are drinking.
Yeah. But I don't know why there was there is this misconception that, it's a Sauvignon Blanc. It's great for the summer. No, dude, it's also great in the winter, I mean, you're not eating fish and white meats only in the summer. You do that also in the wintertime. So, I mean.
So these are the three events in contemporary times that changed the consumption of wine. Obviously, the Judgment of Paris in 1976 put American wine on the map, and that's never looked back. But the one that's not really discussed is the French paradox, which is basically comparing the American lifestyle to, and here the French, but it's really Mediterranean. It would include Friuli and parts of Italy, of course, and anybody around there. And that is A, the pace of life, and B, red wine. And it's not curative, but it's sort of Teflon character on your arteries. That's what this is about right here. Morley Safer brought this out in 1990 on 60 Minutes, and it changed that direction of red wine. It became 60-40 from 40-60, just from this. And it has never looked back on that until now, as you're talking.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the movie Sideways, which changed the consumption of Merlot and Pinot Noir. But those are specific things that happen in the history.
I gotta read that, the French paradox.
Yeah, this is all about olive oil and all that kind of stuff. But it's a very important part of what you're saying. But I have noticed an interesting switch, just as an observation. And the thing about white wine from Italy, particularly, and Friuli in general, Italy in general, is they're so fascinating, and the character's so different. You can't say, oh, this is Sauvignon Blanc, this is like a Sancerre, this is like a Chardonnay from...
Right.
They have such diverse character.
Yeah, it's true. Well, every region in Italy, there's a different climate, different kind of style of viticulture. So it depends where you really are. Some of the best white wines that I've had in my life are from Italian white wines that I had in my life are from Alto Adige, which is a region that is next to us, to Friuli. It's like they are our cousins, They have much higher altitude, and they have to work with less yield, less production, but a much higher quality of the grape. So
does it make you cringe when you hear like Gallo Rombauer, which is like the worst expression of white wine? And I'm not condescendingly, I'm just saying it for fun, but when you have such crisp, aromatic, structured wines that you get from the Alto Adige, Friuli, and other parts of Umbria, Campania, where they make these incredibly ancient white wines, and then you have to put up with over-oaked, American oak.
No, Paul, I'm happy when those things happen. they make my job so much easier, because then
I guess that's right.
Because there is a very clear distinction between what I do and what they do. And the consumer, they have a choice. They either go that way or they come this way. And it really, the lines are not blurred anymore. They're very well defined to me. So it's great when those things happen. Like, I want more acquisitions like that.
Yeah, good.
I really do.
Because we were at the tasting yesterday, and they weren't Italian. They were other parts of the world, but they were rather indicative of the region. They were white wines I was tasting. And I think, maybe that pet nat movement, the organic movement, which is making cleaner wines theoretically, plays into this movement.
Yeah.
Because pet nats, it's pretty crisp, bright stuff. They got a little bit of fizz on them, and they don't have to taste like kombucha.
No, not anymore, at least.
Which is kind of interesting to me anyway, because like we were talking about, it's always been fermented grape juice. It wasn't until modern times that we started throwing pesticides, herbicides on the plants and doing all this damage to them, and now they're coming back again.
Yeah. Some producer never really got into pesticides at all.
Is Friuli protected that way, or do they have a AOC, or they have a DOC?
Yeah. We have DOCs in Friuli.
And what would it tell the vintner to not do or do?
Well, they don't tell them what to do. They just tell them, if you want to be certified biodynamic, you have to follow specific rules, which are different from the biodynamic certification here in America. But the producers that I work with, they're not biodynamic per se, They're mostly organic, which means they take more care of their land, basically. And 90% of what they do, it's in the vineyard. It's not in the cellar, if it makes sense.
Wow.
So
it is in the vineyard anyway. So here's a crazy story. And I had this
Yeah.
podcast this morning. His name is Alex Gamble. He was a real estate guy in Washington, D.C., did a stage day or year or month or whatever in Burgundy, France, ended up staying there, making wine for like 20 years.
right.
And he came home. Now he's back. He lives in Idaho. I go, what the hell kind of path is this? Who does that? And who and when he's used the term when I was making wine, I thought, that is the weirdest sounding thing I've ever heard. When I was making wine, you're in Idaho, but you were in Burgundy and you owned land in Burgundy, which how hard that is to do.
Yeah.
And then sold it to John Charles Boisset, which is like one of the big players. But you're talking about this idea that, it's from the vineyard.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts. And this is why being at the base of the Dolomites or getting a salinity character from the Adriatic changes the profile of the wine.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it starts and where it ends in the vineyard. Because the harvest is just like the last final step. And then, of course, I mean, you have to use the barrels, you have to use stainless steel, you have to have them fermented and everything, but it all starts in the vineyards.
I was
My
thinking
opinion.
when you were talking about the services that deliver wine, and this is one of my, and again, I say this sort of philosophically, and I kind of mean it, and that kind of pisses me off, but then I understand. Look, the picture behind you that we looked at already, that's from 1975. So I was standing at that wine counter selling stuff, and we need, as in our industry, we need the wines that people know to buy.
Right.
We need those entry level wines. We've always needed them.
Exactly.
We need White Zinfandel.
Yeah.
Right.
You need the entry level Pinot Grigio, the entry level Chardonnay, the entry level Syrah. You need all of those. You need the Prosecco. You need those. I mean, in some cases, they pay the bills.
Yeah, right. So that's the part that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing that's happening. I don't have any evidence of it here, but wine. I got to make a profit. You're here for that. This is why we live. But I keep seeing currently, and I don't think I've ever seen a Friuli wine in an alternative package like a can or a Tetra Pak. Have you seen one of those yet?
There are some out there, yes.
So a Friulian wine in a can.
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's there. It's there.
I haven't seen one.
Well, I'm not going to mention the brand on your
You
show,
don't have to, but that's okay.
It's out there. Yes.
Okay, so how would you carry them? I'm not looking for European canned wines because it's got its place, but is there a market for something as specific as Friulian? Has anybody asked you for Friulian canned wine?
Yes, it happened in the past. Yeah. It's a sign that, especially the younger generations, it's a sign that the times are changing and people love to experiment. For me, when it comes to cans, I don't like the concept of the can. I much rather have the wine bottle in the classic bottle, but it's out there. I mean,
well, okay. So I had on the show. Oh, he's coming on the show. Cornell professor, and his vocation is that lining on the can.
Okay,
that's his job.
Okay,
is to design an effect, test, do whatever you got to do to improve that can lining.
Okay.
But it bothers me, and I have to be very careful when I do the show because I want him to tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
But they're trying to improve the shelf life of the canned wine from X to X, and X, the second X being like 24 months. Okay. Doesn't that in itself cause a problem in your, like, I can only keep this wine for 24 months because the food grade lining is going to deteriorate?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Isn't that bizarre to you?
It is bizarre. I mean, would you drink a Barolo in a can?
No.
Exactly.
That's why I was asking about Friuli.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's we have some wineries that we import and some wines that we work with that they can age for a long time.
Right.
We have some producers that make wonderful white wines they can age for 10, 12, 15 years, which is unheard of as far as white wine goes. But I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it's in a can. It kinds of defeats the like we were talking about romanticism, before, and it kills that. So I mean, there is a market for it. Yeah, of course. Will I be prone to ever sell Friuli wines in a can? Probably no, unless it's a very specific project and very cool. But my tendency is towards no.
So here's what I've seen, and I've had. Actually, I'm going to have an RTD, ready to drink cocktail person on pretty soon. Actually, a local person who's got a really. I actually made my famous martini and my famous Manhattan, which I consider them the best out there.
Okay.
Against this gentleman and his wife's ready to drink cocktail version. His martini was very close.
Okay.
I was impressed with that, and the Manhattan was good. Wasn't nearly as good as mine. But, it had a little too much orange or whatever. But the 2 or 3 people I've had in here that are selling wines in the can, they're not, this is the part that bothers me. It's not born of this idea of trying to bring to the market this extraordinary wine and make it accessible to people that want cans or make it accessible to people that want a single serving. That's not what they're doing. They're looking at the marketplace going, how can I take some shelf space so that eventually Treasury or Constellation or one of those guys comes and buys me out.
Yeah. They start with these companies, they always start with very specific projects.
That's it.
And they're going after the big sharks. And sometimes they succeed, sometimes they don't. It's just not my philosophy. I mean, it's not what we do as small importers.
No, exactly. And you don't want to do that because you have a passion for the product. And it's not about passion for the packaging to try and fill your SWOT analysis, that you learned in marketing school.
Yeah.
It's to find that niche of wine that people will enjoy. And it's almost like being a chef where you look at them and they taste the wine and you're going to go, you must get great satisfaction.
Right. Yeah. For me, it's not about, look, the way I see it, it's with my wines, with what I do, whether they are wines from Friuli or from other regions of Italy. It's, I'm not looking for the chef space. I'm looking for the chef space in your heart as a consumer.
Ooh, I like that.
So that you can come back to it multiple times, and once I'm in your heart, you'll never forget.
But I lop that.
You like it?
I think that's
you can use it. I just came up with that.
I'm writing it down now. I think that in a conversation about the parallel between food and the passion it takes to make proper food and wine, I discussed it this morning, and I thought, it's an interesting parallel because my daughter, she's a baker by trade. My friends will laugh that I brought it up again on the podcast, but her greatest joy is to watch your face when you eat her bread.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you want.
Yes.
Right. And so and I think maybe that's the difference between a fine restaurant or a good restaurant. Whether it's expensive or not, they're irrelevant. But when we're going to an Italian place Friday night, the guy just loves being there.
Yeah.
He loves making the food, and you can taste that, even though it's not tangible.
Exactly.
Right? And wine's the same way.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I brought the can thing up is I think it's an important part to discuss. Because look, when my dad's store was around, we had Bartles and James, it was in a small bottle. It was a 375 or maybe even a 187. There were lots of alternatives to wine then, but they've all gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so this packaging idea or the quality of the wine has to improve. But this young woman that was here, and she was great. We had a great talk. I said, do you think, and he said Barolo, but I said, do you think they're going to put Lafite Rothschild in a can? She goes, yeah, I think they will.
Oh, God.
I'm like, I don't.
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think that the romanticism and the intellectual value and there's something, that's the first time I've ever used that word with wine, but there's something intellectual when you taste a properly made wine.
Yeah.
There's something that strikes
In a bottle.
Do you agree with me that
With a cork.
with a cork? Yes. Do you agree with me that regardless of where it's from, whether it's Friuli in Bordeaux, Burgundy, California, and even if you're sitting with friends that don't really care for wine, which is probably not very often for you.
Well, it happens sometimes, It's either wine or beer, so it's one of the two.
So, but I've found that if you present them, even though they say, I don't like Cabernet, I don't like Chardonnay, I don't like Pinot Grigio, a properly made, and I call them honest wines now, humble wines, wines with humility.
Yeah.
That,
I like that.
That they all like it, that they all will say, they may not want to go buy it because it's not their style or something,
right.
but they'll recognize.
Oh, they will recognize the value.
There's something unique there.
Yeah, they recognize, there's been a lot of work behind that bottle. And when the wine is good, even a non-wine connoisseur, they're going to appreciate that. You don't need to have a W set to
W set
to recognize good wine and to explain good wine, with all due respect to, all the certifications out there. I don't have a W set, by the way. So just
I was snubbed by the master program.
Really?
They didn't, no one told me how to do it. They just told, I think I've told the story before, but I was on the plane and I got an email from the Institute of the Masters of Wine saying, do you want to be a master? It was a broadcast email. Do you want to get a master of wine? I go, yeah. So I filled out the form and then I took the test. It's a 3-hour test you take on your own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, It's an hour and a half of tasting and an hour and a half of essay. They liked my essay because it was a subject I knew well, the cork subject. They did not in any way fashion like my tasting notes.
Really?
Well, you're supposed to take a class on how to take the test.
Yeah.
It's a $350 test, a $350 class to learn how to take their test.
Wow.
So I'm like, it wasn't good, but that's okay. I have great respect, as you probably do, for that. For those top levels.
Absolutely. I'm not like a super technical wine guy when it comes to, specific tasting notes. I never studied that. I run by passion. Passion is my fuel.
Yeah.
And obviously, I grew up in a wine country, so that's.
So how many, in a given day, you set out, you are doing, you're not only doing the sales part, you probably have to collect the money. Sometimes you probably have to do the logistics, get that stuff.
Yeah, that's more my business partner taking care of that, but we do everything in the house. Yes.
Yeah. It's just you two?
3 of us. Actually 4, sorry. It's 4
That
of us.
is, you finally include your wife on that one?
No, that's my business partner's wife.
Okay, good.
My wife and I, we run another little project, another import company that has nothing to do with the Friulian wines. It's more like another passion project. I love wines from Piedmont. I love wines from Marche.
Yeah.
I love wines from Sardinia, so that's more the focus for
those
that
are fun
one.
too.
Yeah. But I like to cover, all the wines that I like from Italy. With Friuli being, my focus because I'm from there. So,
but for the listeners, if you plot out a week, Max's week, you've got to make some sales calls. You've got to get those orders in. You've got to make sure they get them. If they don't get them when they want to, you have to take the call, have them bitch at you for not having them on time.
Of course, yeah.
Maybe possibly pick up a case or two and run it out there just in case.
It happens. It happens more than once in a month. Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
You have to, sometimes you have to collect, and the collection side, particularly in the restaurant world, isn't always that easy.
No, it's not.
So you're wearing a lot of hats.
Well, we're small, we're artisans. So that's what we do. We don't have departments doing that for us.
And the margins aren't that great.
The margins, the margins can always be better.
Yeah.
So I'm not even complaining about the margins. For me, right now, it's more getting out there, investing continuously and connecting with people, traveling. Like I travel here to LA, even though I live in Seattle, I'm always down here. Well, I used to live here too. For me, it's that part, because the more the word spreads out, the more, the more we obviously sell. So even the margins will be better. So,
well, I read an article today winery, group of wineries that did 290 million last year.
Wow.
Pretty big number. With only a 30% gross margin. And that's not too good. I mean, you're working on big numbers, but by the time you take out the rest of it when you're done with that P&L, you got to manage it pretty tightly. I know here it was like that.
No, very. You always have to be careful which wines you're buying, and obviously because those are imports, you know it's the currency exchange.
Yes.
So sometimes you're like, well, I need to pay the producer at that set time, but what if if I pay him like a week earlier, maybe the currency it's better than a week later. So and then you have the containers, and the price of the containers went up. It's always there's always something, Paul. There's always something.
You know what happened here? There was this club in its heyday was doing about 500,000 to 600,000 bottles a year. It was pretty substantial in shipping all that, right?
Right.
And after COVID hit and things started to change, the overhead to have what was not required before. Now, on the wholesale side, which you're doing, that minimum requirement probably hasn't changed that much, except you have more costs like the shipping you're talking about. But here, because marketing has gotten so complicated, because social networking is required, because digital photography is required, because storytelling is required, because videographies.
Yeah.
I could no longer afford the staff it took to do the current marketing requirements, as opposed to only 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago.
Even 5 years ago. Bravo. Yeah.
I sent 33 million emails last year.
Wow.
Okay. So that doesn't happen like accidentally.
No, you got to build that up for a long time.
And you've got to take the pictures, you got to write the content, you got to do the promo codes, all that stuff. So
it's a lot of work.
So I think the surviving retailers on the internet, and what this gentleman's doing that bought our company is he's accumulating more and using economies of scale to do that. And so on the wholesale side, is there besides making a call, what kind of marketing is there? You did trade tastings, which you admitted
we did trade tastings. They're
not that successful.
Well, it's our project, like all the smaller importers and distributors, is very particular. So again, to get all the buyers in one room, it's a blessing. So it doesn't happen that often. It's like, what I would like to say is that yes, maybe they could work, but they never do.
Yeah.
For most of the time,
if you expect for there to be a pile of orders when these people leave, that's the mistake.
That never happens. It's a great way to make connections with some other new buyers. But even at the Trebiceri, when we come to LA for the Trebiceri, it's great. You see all the people in the industry, but you see the same, faces.
Same people. Yeah.
It's mostly like 60% of the people at the trade tastings are importers and distributors, and we need customers there.
We need the buyers there.
We need the buyers, and the other tools that I have, it's basically the face-to-face. And then I send emails.
It's a hand sell. They call it a hand sell.
Yeah, and then I send emails all the time, and then because we're covering the West Coast and I cannot physically be everywhere, we send a lot of samples out to people that
And that's not cheap either these days.
To buyers that we trust, they're going to drink the wine and give us an opinion. So, and then there is the whole different part of dealing with distributors, because we also have distributors. So, and that's another completely different monster.
So, I mean, we're already at almost an hour, and these are now 50 minutes. Because it's running on some radio stations, and that's the fill time and all that.
Right.
But the reason I brought that up briefly was the tasting I went to yesterday. There was a champagne manufacturer there, and I ordered stuff.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, he couldn't believe it.
God, good.
He was he's like, really? I go, yeah. I go, I want to send me this, and I had to bring the rep over, like, make sure I get this, right?
Wow.
And then there was another table of a Super Tuscan. I'll tell you a funny story before we get off. The Super Tuscan, and I'm going to buy some of that today or tomorrow, only because I'm going to be down the street from the villa, and I wanted to entertain me, so I'm going to buy something now, so that when we're there in a week or two, I can say, hey, by the way, we're here. But let me tell you a funny story. So I'm at the end of this table, and there's a couple Barolos there. I had never tasted them, forgot the brand now, and it's got a watercolor painting on the label, and
Mussio?
Yes.
Starts with the V?
Yes, that's the one. And some very specific vineyard designates. I mean, some high-end cru stuff, right? Like $300-$400 a bottle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who has to make, is Barolo some exceptional but very expensive.
So beautiful wines, haven't tasted them before, taste them. I go home, I go to pick up some stuff I left at a party that we had put on the night before, tasting, and my friend goes, it's her house, she goes, do you know who brought this bottle of wine? It's sitting on the table. I go, no. She goes, I'm going to toss it. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I go, let me see that. And she takes a picture with one of those app things, and she goes, wait a minute, it's $350.
Wow.
And I go, I just tasted that wine like literally an hour ago, and I'd never tasted it before. It's like $350 wholesale. And it was a 2004, but listen to this, it was a 2004 Brunate. Yeah. But there was a shoulder ring on it. This is the part that confused me. There's a shoulder ring on it. It said red Piedmont dessert wine on it. Which means if it's an 04 Barolo, then it was probably sent here, 06, 07 maybe, 2 years in the barrel or whatever.
08.
Yeah, okay, even further along.
Yeah.
So either there was some weird tax that they were trying to avoid.
Yeah, probably they couldn't label them as samples, so they probably put the sticker on it.
So this is red. And I go,
red dessert
I'm pretty
wine.
sure this isn't dessert wine.
No, it's not. That's
anyway,
funny.
Max, always a pleasure to see you. When are you going back to Washington?
In a couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some sales calls to make and
all over.
Yeah.
I'll be in San Diego tomorrow. Thursday I'm gonna be in the OC, and then Friday morning I'm flying back. So
wish you luck out there. You're always welcome to swing in here when I'm around and
love it.
Chat wine. And you, next time you travel with the missus, have her come in and we'll taste some wine together.
Yeah.
There was a sales meeting I was at in 1982 with Xerox, 200 sales reps in the room. And the head guy calls up a guy. He goes, I want to introduce you to Ken, whatever his name was. He goes, this guy is a star salesman. And we're like, ooh, wow. He goes, you want to know why? He goes, because we rode together the other day, and he started here, and he went up to here, and he came down to here, and he went over to here, and we were all over damn town.
That's what you have to do, man.
But that's what you have to do.
That's what you have to do.
Good to see you. Cheers.
Good to see you. Thank you, Paul.
Very good. Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe because there's more great interviews on their way. Folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.